Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Dose. Actually, good afternoon. I'm running a little bit behind today. I said noon, but uh, got a little bit waylaid by something else. However, I do want to spend a few moments today just connecting and encouraging, getting our daily dose of Pinellas Park Church of Christ. Wanted to share with you just some thoughts of the week. Um, as I've traveled about and gone to the various places, picking up this and that to try to get prepared for some of the things I have to do for school, some of the things that we're doing for the church, and likewise just family preparation. I've found myself kind of faced with certain challenges. For instance, because other people have panicked, it's very difficult to find toilet paper. Went to one place to try to pick up a little bit of butter. All the butter sold out. Perhaps the oddest one to me, though, was went to pick up pizza dough, pre-made pizza dough, at three different stores, just trying to have our Friday night pizza movie night with our family, like we normally do. And all of the pizza dough is, missing. And I just thought that was the strangest thing. And I don't think I quite understand exactly what is going on with that, but it kind of made me think of a story from the Bible, and that is the story of David. David is a young boy. He's used to, tending sheep, and one day his father sends him on a mission to take food and things to his brothers who are on the battlefront. And while he is there, we know the story. He ends up facing down this giant by the name of, Goliath. He didn't leave the house that day, thinking that he would run into some challenge. He didn't leave the house that day knowing that, Goliath was over there waiting. But when he shows up at the battlefront to give these foods to his brothers, there's Goliath, and he's, blaspheming, God. He is, making fun of the Israelites and their, their God and their worship and their practice and all of those things, and it becomes a challenge to David. And David is discouraged. He looks around and he sees the armies of Israel, and he says, why is nobody doing anything about this? And of course, the Bible seems to present a lengthy kind of discussion that takes place, especially between he and his brothers. And his brothers are kind of like, hey, why are you showing up here as a boy telling us, the men, what to do? And at the end of the day, David basically says, look, I'll do it. I'll do it. And of course, Saul is afraid, and the brothers are afraid, and David says, "I'll go," and they try to talk him out of it. They try to tell him it can't be done. They even try to put armor on him. Then he says, "Look, just let me do it, and let me do it my way." And he puts the armor off. He bends down. He picks up 5 stones. Now, we don't know why 5 stones, but he picks up 5 stones from a nearby creek, and he runs onto the battlefield. And David, undaunted by anything that Goliath says, looks at him and says, today, I'm going to hit you with a stone. And I'm kind of, interpreting it here, putting it in my words. I'm going to hit you with this stone. It's going to kill you. Then I'm going to take your sword, cut your head off, and feed you to the birds. It's kind of a brutal story. It's kind of a difficult story that really is quite violent, but it does present to us a couple of things. Number one, every person involved in this story had their own giant. They had their own difficulty. They had that thing they struggled with. For instance, the brothers, they were struggling with pride. Here's their younger brother wanting to fight the giant, and they're like, who are you to tell us? And then, of course, there's the King Saul. His giant is fear. All he wants to do is hide in the ditch. And, of course, the rest of the army is really not any better. So then David, of course, he's got the literal giant, and he is not afraid. And David gives us the recipe for overcoming all of them. Saul could have overcome his fear. The brothers could have overcome their pride, and if they would have just followed the recipe that David followed. You see, David went back and he considered his own history, and he recounts it to them. He tells them, look, when I watch the sheep, when I'm tending the flock, there are times when the lion comes and I deliver, the lion, or deliver the flock from the lion. by using the sling. But you see, really, in reality, it's God who's delivering me. When I'm tending the sheep and the bear comes, it's the same thing. It's God who delivers me. It's God who provides me, with the protection, the refuge, and the opportunity to stand up, and be the vessel through which He can display His great and awesome power. Now, you go back to the giant and you see the same thing there. David basically saying, look, this seemingly impossible task, this seemingly insurmountable hurdle, the giant, the guy, now imagine, 9 foot tall. I mean, this guy wouldn't just have to stoop down to get in your door. He'd have to get on his knees to get through most people's doorways. This 9 foot guy, beaten by someone who is in the current society considered a boy, not mature enough to go and actually fight in the army, not mature enough to be there at the battlefront. But he says, you know what? It is possible. It is possible with God. Just like all things are possible with God. And isn't that what Paul says over in the New Testament? Isn't that what Paul encourages us to believe? Isn't that what Paul encourages us to, practice in our lives? Isn't that what Christ said? The Bible tells us that as a whole. Jesus in Matthew chapter 19 and 26 says, but Jesus looked at them and said, with man, this is impossible, but with God, all things are possible. Right? And then, of course, you flip forward just, a few years, and you have the apostle out of due time. Paul, once a persecutor of the church, had his own hurdles, had his own giants to conquer, including that one on that road, the day that Christ confronts him. Has a lot to overcome. But you see, it's Paul that tells us that, we may have situations where, it looks dark, it looks dreary, it looks like the difficulties can consume us. In chapter 4 of the book of Philippians, he says, I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me. You were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity. Now that I am speaking of being in need, for I have learned to whatever situation I am, be content. I know how to be brought low, and I know how to abound. In any and every circumstance, I have learned the secret of facing plenty and hunger and abundance and need. In other words, look, life's going to bring you these giants. Life's going to bring you things as big as hunger and as big as, needing, and as big as, having no money or losing that job or not having friends or feeling alone or being depressed or maybe even, suicidal or tempted to do things that we wouldn't otherwise do. We're going to find ourselves at times facing those types of hurdles. But then Paul says, look, I found the recipe. I've learned the secret. And here's what he says in Philippians chapter 4 and verse 13. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. I can do all things through the God that gives me strength, through the God that sent his son, through the God that has witnessed all of this history going from David to Paul, through the God that has moved it all with his power, with his strength, with his might at your back. There's nothing you can't do. That's why Jesus, when he would come, he would say, look, if you have the faith as small as a mustard seed, the smallest of seeds, you say to that mountain, move, then it will move. Not that we're literally moving a mountain, but what he's saying is, look, sometimes you're going to think things are impossible. But with me, they are possible. We live in this time of uncertainty where people are cleaning out the stores, where we're being told not to go to the beach, where we're told basically to stay in our homes was the last report that I saw. We got up this morning and taught 2 classes at Lift Academy from my home and talking to a bunch of kids who really haven't left their home in 2 or 3 days. And it was kind of a troublesome thing. And they feel isolated, and they feel, alone, and they feel it's a difficult thing. Take some middle school boys and stick them in their house for several days, and man, you could be asking for some real trouble, some real giants, some real hurdles. But that's the world we live in. These are uncertain times, and it's an uncertain existence, but you can overcome your giants. But you especially can overcome your spiritual giants by giving everything to God. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, here's a couple of things that I mean by it. Number one, did you think to pray? Right when you woke up this morning, as the old song says, as you left your bed this morning, did you think to pray? It's hard to give things to God when you don't talk to God. So, did you say a prayer today? Will prayer be your norm for the rest of the day? And number two, have you let God talk to you through His Word? Now, these things that we're doing together for 10, 15 minutes each day at noon, and I got started a little bit late today, but it will be each day at noon, this daily dose of Pinellas Park. These things that we're doing, hopefully they'll point you towards something in the Bible that will help you, that will strengthen you, that will cause you to look at this world, see the giants, and then strive to overcome them. So just two simple things today that I want you to think about and to do. Number one, you talk to God. And number two, you let Him talk to you. Thank you for tuning in to your daily dose of Pinellas Park. We'll see you tomorrow.